shops, or nearly all. There's very few chain store shops. It's a lovely part of town to wander around. There's individual handmade bits of pottery, there's smart clothes, there's nice little wine bars, there's shops that sell nothing but tea or coffee. You know, I mean blended tea and coffee, leaves and things, and beans. I mean, it's a really upmarket part, uphill part of town too. Just realised what I said there. Now, these are the number houses here, so called because they're the first houses to have numbers. The first one with the green door is where William Logsdale lived, and he was a painter. He's painted scenes from Dennis and from Lincolnshire. And behind these lovely Georgian facades are even older houses. And here you can see what I mean about the buttresses and the I mean, this wall's like a tea bag, look. There's so many roofs on the cathedral. It's not just the big one on the nave, there's dozens of them. It weighs hundreds of tons, this lead, and it's the buttresses that have taken the weight. The walls couldn't do it on their own. This is the new Dean's Gardens here. It's a visitor centre. You can get a cup of tea, nice little lunch. It has a souvenir shop. Quite nice. There's so many places around here to sit and pass half an hour, you know, or whatever. You're spoilt for choice, really. Now, if you look at out of your window to your right, on the top deck anyway, you'll see a little head sticking out the wall just here. Nobody knows why it's there. It hasn't got a body because I've looked. And I think it's somebody waiting for the bus because nobody else could tell me what it's. I just like that. What do you think, Snuff? I like that sort of thing. This is the old chancel with the flag flying, and this is the bishop's house next door. Both are listed. Both have even older houses dwelling behind them. The bishop doesn't live there anymore. He moved out in 2011. But it's still called the bishop's house. And this is where I would actually recommend you get up and have a look, because this is important. Here on your left is the Roman gateway, eastern gateway to Roman Lincoln. Roman Lincoln was a city of about 7,000 people, which is big by Roman city standards. It was the head of the province called Britannia Secunda, and this was very much a show-off gateway. The walls were 8 metres high, 3 metres thick, and down there is Roman street level. So everywhere you've been walking, everywhere we've been riding on the bus, you get that far down, you will get Roman. It's everywhere. It's a blasted nuisance. When we build a new office block or something like that, we dig down to the footings, about that far down, you find Roman. They extended the car park where I used to work, dug down, found the bones of a Roman centurion. It's quite wonderful. You've got a sort of car park and the walls are Roman, you know? But yes, that's the eastern gateway. And I rather love that one. And the trees on the other side, there's a statue of Alfred Lord Tennyson. And he wrote, "Come into the garden, Maud, Lady of Shalott, charge of the light brigade." In fact, he was Queen Victoria's poet laureate. And he's there because he was a local lad. He came from Somersby in the Lincolnshire Wolds. And he's standing there with his dog Corinna. And you can see some of the buttresses there, just see them through the trees. They're flying buttresses. They're several feet from the actual wall they're supporting. And there's just a finger of stone that's actually transferring the weight. I find that fascinating. How did they work that out? So many things I don't understand. He was a celebrity, you know, Tennyson. He was a star. I mean, people used to come just to say they'd seen Tennyson. Nothing to do with his poetry. He was a celebrity, you know. I mean, how many people do we have on television now who are famous for being famous, you know? He was a proper famous, he was. Oh. And here, coming up on your left, is where the Romans had their baths. They didn't have the water. The water came from Roaring Meg Spring, which is a mile away, downhill, and it's presently underneath Waitrose is Roaring Meg Spring. And the Roman engineers somehow had to get the water a mile uphill to here, where they were going to have the baths. There's evidence of baths in the gardens here of these houses. They bathed themselves with soap, which was made from animal fat sort of squished together with a few ashes embedded in for scraping. But they were very keen on cleanliness with the Romans, and they had Roman loos. I've actually been lucky enough to go into a couple of genuine Roman loos, and you don't go in and close the door and come out when you've finished. You sit side by side with maybe 10 other people in a horseshoe shape, sort of chatty and friendly. Unbelievable, as far as I know. And you clean yourself with a sponge on a stick. When you finish with it, you put it down for the next person to use. Oh, it gets worse. If you pick this thing up badly, you are said to get hold of the wrong end of the stick. That's where the expression comes from. Yeah. And this is Newport Arch coming up on your left. It's the only Roman gateway which has been in constant use. I know there's other Roman gateways, but that one's always been in use. There's a nice picture board if you wander around that part of town, which shows you a lorry firmly stuck underneath, and they couldn't shift it. They had to number the stones, dismantle part of the arch, get the lorry out, and then rebuild it as per the Romans. And there was a dig in these gardens here, going from that garden there, they've re-grassed theirs, to this one over here, and they've left theirs. But there's obviously something going across there, don't know what it is. And this part of the journey takes us to the Museum of Lincolnshire Life. It's a little gem, I think. It's a sort of donut shape. You wander around at your own pace. Safe play area for the kids in the middle, nice little tea room, free to enter, last entry 3:45. And it's got artefacts from our social history, 1750 to today. They've got a row of shops laid out the way they were, and there's rooms laid out to show how life was. In fact, it's kind of cosy. I've seen things in there that I recognise from my granny's house. It's rather sweet. And you've got military bits and pieces, we've got agricultural bits and pieces. I mean, agriculture in Lincolnshire is very important. We still provide about a third of the nation's food. And so you've got tractors and threshing machines, there's all sorts in here. Something for everybody. And it's to the front of us, and slightly to the right. And you'll also see why the people who were born in Lincolnshire are called yellow bellies. One of the versions of this is that the people who lived in the Fens part of the county were jaundiced and poorly looking because it's marshy and swampy and a bit malarial. They don't like that. The one they like is that the Lincolnshire Regiment of Foot, they carried a yellow flag and they had yellow flashes on their jerkins, and you'll see them in there, all done out in their yellow. So that's why they're called a yellow belly. It doesn't mean you're a coward. I come from Cornwall, I don't care. I think I'm a Pisky. Am I a Pisky? Cornish Pisky? Could be. Anyway, the wall walk ahead of you is complete for the first time ever. It was a wooden palisade originally, but they swapped it for stone in the first 100 years or so, because obviously it's a lot tougher. But it's a fabulous thing to do. Sadly, it's one of the things that comes with a ticket. You can walk right through the castle for free, but if you want to do the wall walk, see Magna Carta or the prison, they come with a ticket. But the wall walk today will be amazing. Lots of steps though, just to warn you, there are steps. But the views are stunning. Right now, on your left, this nice little primary school was actually Hangman's Ditch. Until 1868, executions were done in public. But here in Lincoln, we took them inside the castle in 1814 for crowd control. So many people came to watch these poor devils slowly strangled to death. Could take half an hour. They hauled you by your neck up from where you were standing. So it was very, you could expect members of your family to hang on to your legs, or you could pay small boys, because that beats things out of it, and they were called hangers-on. And it was a fellow from Horncastle in Lincolnshire, he was a cobbler actually, and he worked out that if the body fell far enough and fast enough, you'd snap your neck as you fell, which was a lot quicker, a lot more humane, nothing like as much fun for the spectators obviously. And 15,000 would gather and stand around and jeer and cheer as you slowly died. I mean, God almighty. Anyway, the water tower there was designed by Sir Reginald Blomfield in 1911, because 1903 and 4, a typhoid epidemic in the city wiped out 131, killed 1,000 because the water was polluted. So that water tower has water coming from Elkersley in Nottinghamshire, comes from 23 miles away. Oh, here we go. Newport Arch. Of course, don't forget Roman street level, because you know how much of this is below the ground. About a third of it you can't see at all. Because oh, here we go, there's a car coming. But it's still a beautiful thing. And the picture board, as you might just see as we go by, the small arch would be high enough for a man on horseback to ride through, I should say, if you could see the whole thing, you know, but a lot of it's still under the ground. And this is, like I said before, is Bailgate. It's the Bailey of Lincoln Castle. It's in also part of Ermine Street, which is that very famous Roman road that went from York to London, and because we are so important, goes right through the middle of Lincoln. In fact, it takes you to the Forum, where you'd find the basilica and the shops. And a lot of these houses have got Roman remains in the cells. A lot of them. Roman cities were built very much on a grid pattern, a bit like the American ones are today. So ahead of you, they've marked in cobbles where the pillars of the Forum were. There's 19 circles of cobbles representing the pillars. There's a couple outside Greg's here, which if you're on that side of the bus you can see. And if you go round the corner, if you're on this side of the bus, keep your eyes peeled down the middle of this road on your side, because they go right down the middle of the road ahead. And once you've seen one, you've got them all, so you can find them. Have you got them? I always knew they were there, but I didn't know what they represented. Oh, leaves along here, fellas. Leaves. This is a Roman well under glass on your left, and this is the apse of a 6th century wooden church. They've marked that in cobbles just here too. And on the corner of the castle there's a round turret. That's called Cobb Hall, and that's where they took the hanging in 1814. And of course, it's still public, but the public can't get at them to make a nuisance of themselves, you know? So inside the castle we've still got an operating court. We've got the prison. If you watch Downton Abbey, the prison scenes in Downton Abbey were filmed in here in Lincoln. It's Victorian, built on the Victorian separation system, which determined that you should have nothing to do with anyone. So if you came out of your cell, which you rarely did, you wore a hood so nobody could see you. You couldn't see anybody very much. Even if you went to the chapel, there's a wooden baffle down either side of each pew, so you can see the chaplain dead ahead, and he can see everybody else, but you can't see anybody at all except the chaplain up there. Unless, of course, you're about to be executed, and then there's a bench at the back where you can sit and chat. So that's part of the prison. I say, and we've got the wall walk, which is stunning, and we've got a copy of Magna Carta. There's only 4 in the world. King John was forced by his barons, as you probably know, to seal this thing in 1215. Up until then, the crown, the monarch, was like a god. You as an individual had no rights at all. The crown could take your kids, your land, your wife, your life. You were worth nothing. But Magna Carta gave you some rights as an individual. And these things were sent all around the realm once he'd signed them. One was sent to Lincoln, and that's the one we've got. It says Lincoln on it. And there's only 4 left in the world now. There's one here, there's one in Salisbury Cathedral, and there's 2 in the British Library. But one is, you can see what it says. It doesn't look much, it's kind of what it says that's important. And it's in a strange sort of French-Latin mixed, if you can imagine. And as I say, it lives in its own climate-controlled crypt, along with the Treaty of the Forest. There's only 2 of those in the world, and we have one of those. That gave some rights to the people who live in the Royal Forests. If anybody wanted to get off the bus other than Brayford Pool, just thinking? No, you're going to stay on all the way around. Should have asked you that. Okay, cool. So Magna Carta is so important. It's recognising the rights of the individual, as I say. And the American Constitution is built more closely on Magna Carta than is our own. And the government offered it to the Americans to persuade them to join the war. But the government doesn't own Magna Carta, as it turns out. It's not owned by the state, and it's not owned by the castle, although it lives there in its climate-controlled crypt. It's actually owned by the cathedral. And it was the monks of the cathedral who said to the government, it's not yours to give, back off. So we still have it. I mean, if they had, this thing would be in a glass case in Washington DC by now. But it's still here, and one copy at least is still in the castle, just there, you can see it. RAF Scampton is dead ahead, or was. It's decommissioned now, but it's where the dam busters flew from, dead ahead, about 10 miles up the road. And it's where the Red Arrows were based until very recently. Now, as I say, it's been decommissioned. We don't quite know what's going to happen to it. But we've still got RAF Waddington on the far side of the city. We've got RAF Cranwell. Cranwell is officer training in the middle of Lincolnshire. Southeast of the county, it's RAF Coningsby, which is the home of the new typhoon. So there's one or two things still over the city. Another interesting thing is, down in the valley, you'll see the roof, a long silvery roof of a grandstand. They did have horse racing here, and when I came to the city, it was a regular thing. But it was never going to work, really, because you've got the grandstand there, then you've got the road, and then you've got the racetrack. Now, nobody's going to pay to sit in the grandstand and watch traffic go by, obviously. So on race days, they diverted the traffic, around a teeny little track around the back of the grandstand. It was utter chaos. There was horse boxes and dogs, there was people and lorries, and it was just never going to work. Anyway, they've given up on horse racing in Lincoln, but the first race of the season is still called the Lincoln Handicap, and it takes place in Doncaster. But the little flat grassy bit in front of the grandstand there, they used that for a couple of little air bases in the First World War, because we built as many planes in Lincoln as anywhere in the world, and they flew them from down there. Second World War, we were bomber county. We had 46 airfields then. As I say, we've got about 10 left, but I've told you the big ones. There's a few more beside, but not many. But then, I mean, the country was covered in runways and so on. If in fact you're out in a car and something looks like a bit of runway in a farmer's field, you're absolutely right. It's exactly what it was. It's everywhere. But then also in the First World War, we had an agricultural engineer in the city called Foster's. And they built tractors and ploughs and things. And the MOD approached them to see if they could build a vehicle that would cope with the battlefields of the Somme. It had to be heavily armoured, it had to have its own firepower, Caterpillar tracks obviously, and top secret. Well, Foster said they'd give it a go, so that nobody would know what they were really doing. They told people they were building a water carrier for Mesopotamia. I don't know what bright spark thought of that. You can't keep saying water carrier. So they said, we're building a water tank. And then that got shortened to tank, and that's how the tank gets its name. And if you want to know what the really early tank looked like, it's up in the Museum of Lincolnshire Life. That one up there is called Daphne, which I think is a wonderful name for a tank. And we'll see a model of Daphne on our travels, because we're heading to the Brayford Pool, which is where Lincoln really started, actually. The Iron Age Corial Torvey tribe settled down here, and the Brayford then was a great marshy, swampy mass. Covered all of the bottom of Lincoln. Now it's neat and pretty, and the university is on one side, there's nice hotels and things on the other, but it was a marshy, swampy mass then, settled by the Corial Torvey tribe, who gave the city its name, because the Iron Age word for a pool is Llyn, for hill settlement it's Don, we were Llindon, and then the Romans came and Latinised us to Lindensium. Oh, crap, have a quick look now. Brayford is out to your left, and the Fosdyke is going out to your right with people in canoes, look. Because the Romans joined that piece of water to the sea by that little canal. That little canal goes to the River Trent at Torksey. The Trent joins the Ouse joins the Humber flows into the sea. Navigable waterway, thanks to that little 11-mile canal, which links Lincoln to the sea, thanks to the Romans. And after the Romans came the Anglo-Saxons, they didn't make such a difference to the city, but the Vikings followed them, and they were great traders as well. So people are trading across northern Europe from the Brayford, thanks to that little canal. So this is all the new university around us at the moment, 24-hour McDonald's on the corner here. I'm not saying it's part of the university, but I'm sure that's why it's there. And this is Daphne, sitting rather beautifully in the middle of this roundabout. You can see what I mean about the Caterpillar tracks not going round the wheels at the bottom. And she's built largely by women, because the men have gone off to war. A lot of the armaments were built by women. That's what she looks like. The real McCoy obviously is 3D, that's just 2D, but you get the idea. And the road dead ahead of the bus now is called Tritton Road. And it's called that because the MD of Foster's at that time was a fellow called William Tritton, and they test drove the tanks down there, straight ahead of the bus. It's a long, flat, straight road, and they test drove the tanks down there. And I love this view of Lincoln, because you've got the tank in the foreground, which is our military and our industrial past. Then you've got the architecture faculty, which I happen to think is elegant, that white building. And on the hilltop you've got the cathedral, which is just about perfect, isn't it really? I love that. There's Lincoln in one shot, isn't it? So yes, this is all the university, because we're not building planes anymore, we're not building tanks, But we've got 15,000 youngsters. We've got education, we've got research, we've got all the things that young people bring. I know we've got McDonald's, dozens of them actually. But we've got wine bars and coffee shops and nightclubs. The place has come to life, frankly. When I joined the city, 40-something years ago, anything after 6 o'clock, it was shut. Lincoln was closed. But now, not now, it's lovely. Anyway, let me tell you about the Lincoln Inn. Devil sent a couple of imps to Earth to make a nuisance of themselves. They started in Chesterfield, where they twisted the spire, worked their way across the Midlands, until eventually got to Lincoln. Got inside the cathedral, knocking bits off the statues, tipping the chairs over, finally tripped up the bishop. Well, God had been watching all this. Once they tripped up the bishop, they'd gone too far. So he sent some angels to Earth to sort things out. One of the imps realised that things were going to get a bit tricky, so he made a dash for it and he got away. The other imp was too slow. So they caught him and they turned him to stone. And he's still inside the cathedral to this day. You can see him, stone. And I'll show you where he is, roughly. So have a look at the hilltop, because that white wall with trees inside is Lucy Tower. The walls were twice as high, they've fallen in a bit actually. The Pepperpot Tower, the flag flying, is the observatory. Both of those are part of the wall walk. If you can manage the wall walk, you get to see all of that. The observatory was built so they could observe any prisoners making a dash for it across here. And also one of the prison governors was a fellow called John Merriweather, and he was a keen amateur astronomer, and he had his telescopes up there. And Lincoln Castle is very interesting. Normally when you build a castle, you have a motte, high point, bailey, flat bit. We have two mottes, Lucy Tower and the observatory. There's only one other castle in the country that has two, and that's Lewes Castle in Sussex. Basically, if the enemy gets inside the castle walls, you've got a serious problem. But if you can get to one of these high points and rain down arrows, or maybe even just hide, you have a bit better chance. After that, really, it's good night, Vienna. But at least here we've got two chances, so slightly better off. Now the castle, oh, we can't see it now, I've lost. Anyway, trust me, the cathedral central tower is 83 metres high now. In the 1300s, they put a spire on the top of it, made of wood and lead, made it twice as high, tallest building in the world for 250 years. 1545, a mighty storm brought the whole lot crashing down, and they haven't replaced it, basically not safe. But imagine what it must have looked like when it was twice as high. And what a good quiz question. What was the tallest building in the world for 250 years? County offices coming up on your left, looking very imposing. Flag of Lincolnshire flying. Blue quadrants represent the North Sea. Green quadrants are the fields and the agriculture. The sandy North Sea coast is that little yellow bit. Cross of St George in the middle, and slap in the middle of everything is the Virgin Mary's insignia, which is the fleur-de-lis. And of course the Virgin Mary is the patron saint of the city. There you go. Designed by a woman about 15 years ago. Now then, this is the Brayford Pool. I was just telling you, because I think it's interesting. You know, I said the Romans called us Lindensium. Then they changed it again to Linden Colonia. We became a Colonia town. Somewhere so important that the legionnaires could retire here. And Linden Colonia gives you Lincoln. And it started with the Iron Age word for pool and blah blah blah. I like that stuff. If you want to walk the Fossdyke Canal, it's lovely. It takes you about 40 minutes until you come to a little pub where you can get a cider and a sandwich and no shelter. But it's a nice walk. You soon leave the city, you get out amongst the lily pads and the houseboats. It's really nice. I was going to say the other way you could do it is to get on the Brayford Bell, but you can't because she's parked, look. She should be doing her stuff up the Fossdyke, but she's not for today for some reason. The strange metal structure here, we're just passing, is actually a water clock, which is not working at the moment, sadly. But it's supposed to remind us of the cranes and the derricks, because this was the industrial heart of the city. After the Romans and so on, this was the industrial part of the city. This is where the barges came and went. When I came to the city, this was derelict. The far side, which is now the university, was railway sidings and old engine sheds and things. This side was broken glass and weeds and waist-high nettles. It was really horrid. Not a bit like it is today. And they've tarted it up beautifully, I think. You've still got the railway on the far side, but one of the engine sheds they've turned into the engine shed, which is the name for the student union. And one of the old warehouses they've turned into the university's library. So they've repurposed it. Most of it is brand new, but they've repurposed those two things. But look, there's people in boats. I love all this stuff.
Yeah.
And when the university's here, it's actually jumping along here because it's full of young people, you know. So if you want to walk the Frostbite, you follow your nose up that way. Just keep, oh look, also wedding, isn't it? A quick line up. So follow your nose up under the road bridge there, and that will take you up to the pub. If you go on the Bayford Bell, it's a nice way to do it, but you don't get off. So don't think you're going to end up in the pub. You're not. They do a commentary and they have cups of tea and things, but you're on the boat. So these buildings here, bear in mind this was derelict, they have built to look like the industrial part of the city. So this is supposed to look like a warehouse. Hello, hello.
Hello.
Well, it's not the same man, is it?
No, it's a lady this time.
Didn't you like him then?
No, it was alright.
Well,
Never said a word.
Is that your husband?
no, good God, no.
Oh, well, sorry, then we can talk about it. Is it?
Yeah, I have to that.
Oh my God.
So this is supposed to look like an old warehouse. I don't know whether you think it works or not. I mean, the one next door to it is built using reclaimed brick, again, keeping this industrial theme going. I don't know if it works or not, but it's a whole lot better than broken glass and weeds, isn't it, really? I do like this, though. The front of the Hilton Hotel has got a glass panel, if you could see it. It's actually an outside lift. And if you're here when the sun goes down and the lights come on, it's quite magical. It's dead glam. And at the top there is a cocktail bar. That's quite a nice thing to do on an evening, I reckon. Just saying. Have we got any swans? We should have some swans. Can't see any. There are swans on the waters here somewhere. There's the common mute swan. They pair for life. And the nice thing is they're on the insignia of the university. The white building behind me has got a red swan painted on it on the bank of the Brayford. And the insignia of Bishop Hugh, who built the great Gothic cathedral, has got a swan on as well. So you've got the wonderful cathedral linked to the uni, which is brand new, with the image of a swan. I think it's rather neat, that, personally. What are these people doing? Just mentioning.
A few.
Oh, I won't tell you. No, he's missed it. Look.
Tree. I know you get a tree. A few leaves.
No, we missed them. Last time there was a family on that side and we got the men in the leaves and the kids were delighted, you know. Oh, it was wonderful, bless them. Actually, that water was pretty revolting. You wouldn't want to fall in there, would you really? Anyway, I digress. So that's a university on that side. This is all brand new on this side. But this isn't new. This building here was actually designed by Sam Scorer in the 1950s as a Ford showroom. And it's a listed building now. Apparently it's a very good example of its type. And we can alter what we do with the inside, but we can't alter the way it looks from the outside because it's listed. And as a Ford showroom, the latest model Ford would rotate in that circular bit there. I bet they don't know when they're having their pizzas, they're sitting in a Ford showroom. And this is Lucy Tower Street, but if you were on the bus a moment ago, you will know that's absolute tosh, because Lucy Tower is up inside the castle, isn't it? Up there with the observatory. There was a tower down here, and an early map maker got it wrong, said it was Lucy Tower. We've been calling it Lucy Tower Street ever since. If you look at this building here, it says Tower Street, and then somebody thought, ooh, Lucy, and put Lucy over the top, which I love, you know. It's obviously an addition. So we've got the Brayford Pool here, Frostbite going out that way. This end, the River Witham comes up. Going out that way. This end, the River Witham comes up from Grantham, just kisses the Brayford and goes straight out again. You'll see it. It's just a glimpse, so keep your eyes peeled. Because our High Street, which is running across the front of the bus, has got a river flowing underneath it. You can actually have afternoon tea with the River Witham flowing underneath, which I think is quite different and cool. So on your right now, you will see the River Witham coming up from Grantham. It's very green and gloopy, and it comes under a very low bridge, just over here on your right, and then look immediately to the left, because that's the good bit. That's High Bridge, with shops on the top. Oldest bridge in the country with shops on the top. Bridge was built in about 1100s, 1200s, shops 1500s, 1600s. It's called High Bridge, and it's the oldest bridge in the country with shops on the top. It's a little gem. When we've got the same problems as Venice at the moment, it's starting to sink a bit, so they're having to shore it up. Normally you can wander down there, back to the Brayford, it's a nice thing to do. You can still wander down the other way, and the Glory Hole is kind of interesting. It's also called the Murder Hole, not a lot of people know that. On a nasty dark winter's day, you can imagine slipping a body into the river under the bridge, nobody would see, and the current would take it out to the North Sea, somewhere near Boston. So on a Glory Hole, today it'll be Glory, should be alright. But it's also called the Murder Hole. Right, this is St Mary le Wickford. This little church here is Anglo-Saxon, it's older than the cathedral. If you look to the right of the main doorway, you'll see a creamy stone, big, slightly pointy, and it's a Roman gravestone. Can you see just there? It's embedded in the wall. I said there's Roman everywhere in the city, absolutely everywhere. This is our railway station. It's nothing special, it's neo-Gothic, 1848, but we do have a through line to London. Behind these buildings we've got a new shopping development. Are you getting off, sweetheart? Right, okay. So yes, behind these buildings here is the Cornhill Quarter. It's a brand new development, it's nice shops. There's a swanky cinema where you sit on a sofa and somebody brings your drinks to you. You don't have to wade through other people's popcorn. That's rather nice back here. And it's called the Cornhill Quarter. It's just behind these shops. If you do the High Street, it's a spur off the High Street. You can't really miss it. Oh, blast. Bus is in the way. I was going to tell you about George Bull. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, lovely.
Go to the back row. Not outside.
Yeah, stay outside, heaven's sake. Like an oven here.
Cold seats.
Yeah. So yes, behind the buses, you'll see him in a minute. There's a rusty looking statue. It's George Bull. He invented Boolean logic, obviously a Lincoln man. And I can't understand Boolean logic. I've read up about it and I can't do it. But Boolean logic is the beginning of binary number. Now that I do understand, and I know that binary number is the beginning of computing and barcodes. We live our life by computers and barcodes, don't we? And this gentleman here, this rusty looking fella here, George Bull, is kind of where it all started, or certainly a major contributor to that way of thinking. So a very important man. This is our new transport hub. Basically it's a bus station and a car park, but if you live in a medieval city you get a bit excited about car parks. So we're quite excited about that. This is not exciting but interesting. This is Siemens. They make gas turbines and they are globally important. They export all over the world and they employ 1,500 people. So they're very important to Lincoln today. They contributed towards the engineering faculty down on the campus there, and they bought us a bit of municipal statuary. It's called Empowerment, and it's enormous, you can't miss it. It's two turbine blades, sort of, reaching out towards each other across the River Witham, and it'll be coming up in a mow on your left. You'll just catch a glimpse of it because the trees are in full leaf. But we might see a few swans, because this is the River Witham again. We might see some barges and things. We'll certainly see Empowerment. It's to your left. Keep your eyes peeled. No swans, no swans. A barge. And Empowerment, yes. Can't miss Empowerment, can you? It's enormous. And this is St Swithin's Church coming up. It's Victorian, and it's built on the site of an earlier wooden church that burnt down during the Civil War. You know the Cornhill I was just telling you about, the new shopping development? Well, they were drying gunpowder down there, spark flew across here, set light to the wooden church and burnt the whole lot to the ground. So this is the Victorian replacement. And it's St Swithin. I like St Swithin. I think he's an interesting man. Very holy man, For some reason, he wanted to be buried outside, where he would be rained on, the sun would shine, weeds would grow, people would walk. That's what he wanted. But his followers thought he was way too holy for that. They thought he should be buried inside the church. So they dug him up and brought him inside the church. And it rained for 40 days and 40 nights, because that's not what he wanted. And that's the legend of Swithin. It rains on July the 15th, Swithin's Day, then the rain falls. Is it?
My birthday.
Oh really, it's your birthday? Oh well, you can't forget that then, can you? Well, that's St Swithin's Church anyway, yeah. This is coming up is Silver Street. This is important to the city because it's where the jewellers had their businesses. One of the jewellers was a fellow called James Ward Usher, a collector of clocks and watches and a very clever man. He had the bright idea of making the Lincoln imp, which is not big and it's not pretty, but he had the idea of making that into a lucky charm. And he gave it to the visiting Prince of Wales as a tie pin. Prince of Wales has a really good day at the races, tells all his chums it's due to this new lucky charm. So James Ward Usher made a lot of money. When he died, he left £59,000 to the city, and they built the Usher Art Gallery with it. It was in the 1920s. That was a lot of money. So if you have a quick look to your right now, that's another Blomfield design, the library with the dome on the top, and the head, the silver head, is on the drill, which is a venue for live theatre. And I've seen some good stuff there without paying Covent Garden prices. So if you like live theatre, keep your eye on what's going on there. Ditto the Usher Art Gallery. They have the usual permanent exhibitions, but they have visiting exhibitions as well. They obviously got a Logsdale. Remember the fellow from the number houses that were in the first house? Logsdale got one of his, or some of his. They got DeWint, he's a local painter. They've got Turner and the Lowry. And lots of other things to see, but they have visiting exhibitions as well. So, and also a Blomfield design. You know Mr. Water Tower from the beginning of the tour? He designed the library there and the Usher Art Gallery around the corner. I quite like the little church in front. St Hugh's Catholic Church is the wrong way round. Churches are normally built east-west. You think about the cathedral, east-west, isn't it? That one, north-south. Couldn't get it in east-west. Quite like that.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that detail.
Did you? Yeah.
Thank you.
This is the old magistrates' court here. You can see the cells, some above ground, some below, all haunted of course. And this is the Usher Art Gallery in the nice lawns ahead of us. To the extreme left is the Lincoln Museum, which again is a favourite of mine. It's artefacts from our archaeological past. If you want to know what it was like living amongst the reed beds on the Rayford and fishing from dugout canoes, they've got dugout canoes in there, and Roman combs and things. It's lovely. Smashing little cafe down there. Both are free to enter, last entry 3:45. And now if you look to your right, you'll see on the hilltop a pointy thing. Can you see? That is a memorial to the fallen from Bomber Command, and it's much more complex when you get closer. It's not just a pointy thing. It's the height of a Lancaster's wingspan, and there are 59,000 names engraved around the bottom of that. And it's a whole new visitor centre. They've used lights and holograms and sound and video to recreate the Blitz. It's actually very moving. Because we were bomber county, obviously. And this little pub has its own secret passageway to the cathedral. And the gateway here is called Pottergate because they found Roman pottery nearby. And the red brick building ahead is in front of the oldest red brick building in the city. He's hot, bless him, he's hot. And this is where Catherine Swinford rented rooms in the 1380s and 90s to meet her lover John of Gaunt in there. That's the deanery. They had 4 children, obviously out of wedlock, but they finally married, and then the king legitimised everything, and the Pope blessed everything, and everything was made okay. But I think that's part of our own royal lineage somewhere down the line. So the goings on in there, I think, are quite important. I mean, I've had a look, but anyway, probably heresy, I don't know. Anyway, this is the decagonal chapter house with flying buttresses to die for. This is where the business of the cathedral was conducted. Edward I held the parliament in there, decreed the firstborn son of the monarch should be the Prince of Wales, and he still is. The Knights Templar were tried in there for any crimes they might have committed. His main purpose was the business of the cathedral, but it's glorious. One of the things you have to pay to go and see, unfortunately, but it is lovely. And this, so that's 1220, an edition in 1220. This is another edition, 1285, a bit nearer, bit newer, And this is the angel choir. In here you will find the imp, high up on the left. In that spandrel, where two arches join, that triangle, he's in there. And remember Bishop Hugh, who built the great church? He's been canonised. He's now St. Hugh, and St. Hugh's shrine is in there as well. There's wood carving to die for. I mean, fabulous. All the parishes of Lincolnshire have their own carved throne. It's stunning, absolutely stunning. And this is Judgment Porch. This is important. It's actually very famous. So you've got Christ sitting in judgment in the middle. Those who've led a good life are swelling off up to heaven on one side. The sinners are plunging to hell on the other. And it's called Judgment Porch. And it's there because the people who came to the great church were illiterate peasants. We all were. You and me, not a chance. None of us could read and write. So you've got to get the scriptures message across some other way. It's no good saying go home and read your Bible, because we can't read, you see. So you've got to get the message across some other way. So they did this a lot in the church. You'll see it around the front as well. I'll tell you if you're interested later. But anyway, this is painted in red and green and gold. You couldn't miss it. So if you come to see the shrine of St. Hugh, and you see that, like you think, ooh, I better mend my ways. I won't be doing that after all. I'll do something slightly different. Yeah, it's getting the message across. Marketing in a way, I suppose. But isn't it lovely? That's very famous. Love that. Martin, okay, we're off.
Why don't the two there have heads? You see those two?
Yeah?
Yeah,
Why
they
don't
don't
they got
have
heads?
heads, yeah.
No, a lot of that happened during the Civil War. They knocked the heads off. It was a kind of a defamation of the churches, really. What's he letting people off again, I think? Do you know he's running a completely separate tour down there? I have no idea what's going on. Right, here we go. This is the Bishop's Eye. This wonderful rose window here is called the Bishop's Eye. It's perpendicular tracery at its best. If it's a sunny day, it's like a kaleidoscope of colour inside. It's fabulous. This is the Bishop's Eye. There's a matching rose window on the other end, and that's called the Dean's Eye, but this is the good one. And here on the other side of the bus, on your right, on your left, sorry, it's my right, is the old Bishop's Palace, the medieval Bishop's Palace, owned by English Heritage now, but this was the head of the largest diocese in the land. It stretched all the way from the Humber to the Thames, and it's run from here in Lincoln. So Lincoln has been very, very important in history. And now it's kind of, I don't know, I like Lincoln because there's lots to see, masses. But if it's not so big that you feel you haven't even scratched the surface, you can find your way around Lincoln. It's, oh no, it's a wedding. Oh no, we put that on specially for you. Oh. Anyway, thank you for joining us. Good afternoon.
Thank you.